I'm from Athens, Georgia, born and raised. Went to Savannah State College and the University of Georgia, majored in painting. Um, but I've always drawn and painted. There's a story that goes around in my family of when I was a kid. There's a grand aunt used to tell this story. I had one of those blackboards, for anybody who knows what a blackboard is now. But it was one to where on one side it's black, on the other side it's green, and you flip it over. So I would stand there in my bathrobe and draw on one side, fill it up, flip it over, draw on the other side, and then erase the whole thing and start all over again. And then I would grow out with my grandfather, and he had a hog pen, and the old men would talk and all of that. So a lot of that, all of that informed a lot of what I do and what I see. My series of paintings, the Chitlin Circuit Review, which is about the early history of blues music. I got into that because early in my career I was trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to paint. So it's like getting into the blues and looking at music or art, saying, this is what you can paint. In those stories, in those songs, the lives those people lived. And it's like, yeah, because I don't want to do portraits. I don't want, there's plenty of portrait artists. I want to tell the story. I want to tell the story of the song that they're singing, the life they lived. You look at this painting right here, it's called Mad Water. That painting is based on the flood of the Mississippi River back in, I think it was 1928, 29, somewhere around there. The river flooded so bad that it flooded out all the farms, which at that time were pretty much no more than plantations, that black sharecroppers worked on. So black folks started leaving. And the governor of Mississippi was talking to all the landowners and said, what are we going to do? All the black folks are leaving. We already lost this year's crop. If they leave, we won't have anybody to work the fields for next year. Governor calls the president. President gives the governor the order to call out the National Guard. The National Guard has orders to shoot to kill any black man, woman, or child leaving the state of Mississippi. And most of those folks were leaving on foot, horse cart, some kind of thing like that. But when they started rebuilding that river or trying to shut the river down, the flooding down, they used convict labor. They do the same thing now. So it's social, political, but at the same time, it's something you can look at and you can enjoy the movement, the color, and the figures and how all that just kind of moves in and out. You can enjoy that, but you can look at it for the history that it's talking about. Well, we got this studio, this property, in 2003. My wife wanted a home. And as a visual or as an artist, I was leery of a home because that's a lot of responsibility. If you're paying rent, you can miss a month of rent and you're not going to get kicked out. You miss your mortgage payment, you can get kicked out. And in DC, you can miss about 6 or 7 months of rent and you won't get kicked out. So I was always scared of that. And I've always had apartments or places to where my apartment also operated as my studio. So I didn't want to have to, I'm paying rent over here and then paying rent over there. I always wanted that same place. So the deal was with her, okay, we'll look, but I need a place that's going to have a studio there. Cool. And I'm thinking, all right, that kind of frees this up. The next thing I know, about a week and a half later, she comes, she's got this copy. It shows the house out front, and in the rear ground, you see a little bit of this building, the studio. And I'm like, okay. And we come over to look at it. We end up, come to the house. The lock on the door, I'm used to locks having, a combination of numbers. This was letters, and it was M-A-E. And I'm thinking, that's kind of strange. It just hit me some kind of way. We go in the house. The house was foreclosure. There was all kind of crap on the walls, and the floor was squishy from people urinating on the floor and all this, that, and the other. And it's like, okay, this is going to be a whole lot of work just to get the funk out of this place. We come outside, and then you could see this whole building. And all of a sudden, that M-A-E hit me. My great-grandmother, Ella May, M-A-E. My grandmother, Bessie May, M-A-E. My fool butt stood right there in that backyard, looked up in the sky. Are you telling me to run or to take it? So it's kind of like, all right, that's how we got here. We're in the Deanwood neighborhood of Washington, D.C. It's in Ward 7. Late 19th century, early 20th century, a lot of black folks started moving over here. It became predominantly black. I am, as far as a walk, probably about a mile, maybe a little bit less than that. But the aquatic gardens for us, we go over in that area a lot. We take our dogs to run. We go to the aquatic gardens. We used to go a lot. One of the head groundskeeper there, when we first got here and started our ponds, his name's Greg Dotson. He gave us the water lilies that we have in our pond now. And we always went over there and got advice, and he would come over here and give us advice on what to do and how to, take care of a pond and all this, that, and the other. So it meant a lot. He gave me a lot of history on that pond. The gardens. Their first groundskeeper, who Greg learned from, and at that time, his name was Mr. Lundy. And Mr. Lundy was the one who actually showed them how to overwinter their water lilies and the lotuses, because they kept running into problems to where they would lose a lot of their product over the winter because it would die. And so he showed them how to overwinter them. Basically, he was their Dr. George Washington Carver. And that's who Greg learned from. And so it was really interesting. And I ended up putting Mr. Lundy in a mural that I have over at Dorothy Height Library. And the mural is called Knowledge, and it's based on this neighborhood. Well, I heard about it. I got it in an email. And I looked at it and read, and I thought, this is kind of cool. And it's my neighborhood. It's an area that I know about a lot, have personal history with. And it's something that I care about because I love nature. That's my church. I don't need a building, take me to the original. And so, I wanted to try to do something, to at least apply, see what happens, and applied, and, it happened. Well, a lot of things that I do, as far as murals or as a public artist, depending on the subject matter, but I try to start as early as I can into the history of that neighborhood area and go from there. Who were the first inhabitants? I've done 2 murals that have to deal with, one, the history of 200 years of DC history, another 200 years of Arlington history. And I always started it before Europeans got here, because somebody else lived here before that. And I wanted to do, Native history in those and showcase that in those murals. It wasn't something they were looking for, it wasn't something they had thought about, but it was something, it didn't just start with you. So with this, and when you and I were talking, and you were, you sent me the paperwork and showed human life here being 12,000 BC. That's just something you really have to wrap your head around. 12,000, that's 14,000 years ago. And then, of course, the native way of life. I've done things and I've gotten advice as how to depict native people's clothing and cooking, but I want more. I want to know, how did they actually make clothes? There was a quarry here. How did they cook 12,000 years ago? There was no metal. Europeans hadn't come, so they didn't have pots and pans, spoons, utensils. How was that made? Where was it made from? Or what was it made from? And all of that. Because to me, that's interesting. That's something to show somebody sitting and weaving a basket, or making the basket out of a bowl out of clay, or do you carve a stone? And you know, how did you cook? You know, all of that kind of thing to me plays into what I do. You know, and just from my own personal knowledge, I'd like to know.